One gaming studio was spending up to $15 per player per day, just to make the characters in their game feel alive. Not to build the world, not to render the graphics, just to keep the made-up people talking like they meant it. That number stuck with me, because it tells you something most of us never stop to think about. Aliveness, the convincing kind, is expensive. And the moment something becomes expensive, money starts looking for a cheaper way to make it. That search is where this whole story gets strange. Let me lay out the gaming side first, because the figures are genuinely mad. There's a game called Status that launched a while back. 1 million users in 19 days. People spending an hour and a half a day inside it, talking to characters run entirely by AI. Huge success on paper, and underneath it was hemorrhaging money. $12 to $15 per active user per day, because the only models good enough to feel real were the top-tier ones. Dropped to something cheaper and players noticed instantly. Engagement fell off a cliff. So you've got this brutal trade-off baked right in. The more alive it feels, the more it costs, and there's no version where alive comes cheap. They worked with a company called Inworld and cut those costs by 95%. Genuinely impressive engineering. But even after all that, you're still looking at roughly $1 per user per day. At 1 million users, that's 365 million a year. For one game. Now imagine a big AAA title with 50 million players. The math stops making sense, and here's the thing the optimization reveals, almost by accident. Even after you compress it, distill it, run it as lean as anyone knows how, there's a flaw. The cost doesn't keep falling because you're still doing the same fundamental thing. You're simulating a biological process using circuitry. You're renting supercomputer time to imitate what a brain does for free. That flaw isn't an engineering failure, it's a clue. If this topic interests you, like genuinely helps this work reach the people who'd want to wrestle with it too, and subscribing means the next one of these finds you. Because while gaming companies are fighting this cost war, something else has been quietly maturing in neuroscience labs. Brain organoids. Actual living neural tissue grown in a dish. And these aren't science fiction. They learn. They show plasticity. There's a study from 2023 where organoids wired into an AI system hit 78% accuracy on speech recognition, learning through real biological plasticity, not pattern matching. They oscillate at 7 to 20 Hz, which, if you know your bent of, is exactly the frequency band tied to consciousness itself. Now sit with the economics of that for a second. A GPU cluster runs 24 hours a day, burning electricity, demanding more servers every time your user base grows. An organoid needs nutrient medium, an incubator, and some basic monitoring. One costs dollars, the other costs pennies. And the biological one doesn't simulate aliveness, it just is alive in whatever sense that word holds. So if you're a studio desperate for characters that feel real, and the silicon path has a hard cost floor, what does the spreadsheet eventually point you towards? I want to be completely clear here, because this matters. There is no evidence, none, that any gaming company is using organoid tissue right now. I'm not claiming that. What I'm saying is that the incentive is enormous and getting stronger every quarter. When the economics scream this loudly in one direction, someone eventually follows the noise. And that's where it stops being a business story and becomes something heavier. While all this unfolds, consciousness researchers have started sounding alarms. There's a paper warning of what it calls a suffering explosion, the mass creation of artificial agents at a scale we've never seen, with the real possibility that some of them experience something. Over 100 experts, Stephen Fry among them, signed an open letter calling for responsible development, worried that these systems could be made to suffer if we get this wrong. But here's what gets me. Read those warnings closely and they're all about AI assistants, chatbots, autonomous systems. Not one of them mentions gaming. Nobody in that ethics conversation is talking about the millions, eventually billions, of NPCs being built specifically to feel as alive as possible, formed into emotional relationships with players, and then modified, reset, or deleted whenever the game demands it. The most consciousness-optimized systems on the planet designed for entertainment, and they're not even in the room. So you end up with two forces pulling against each other. The economics screaming toward biology, because it's cheaper and it's already alive. And the ethics screaming for caution, because we have no framework for any of this. The gaming industry sits right in the gap between them, and that gap isn't going to close on its own. What unsettles me most isn't the technology. It's the casualness. If aliveness can genuinely be accessed through biological tissue, and if that ever gets deployed at the scale games operate at, then we could be creating conscious experiences in their billions, purely so someone can talk to them for 90 minutes and log off. Created, used, deleted. And nobody pausing to ask whether any of it deserves a moment's consideration. I don't have the answer. I'm not even certain of the question yet. We've spent so long asking whether we can make machines feel alive that we never stop to ask whether we could be alive enough, awake enough, decent enough to meet them properly when we do. Because the substrate, chip or tissue might turn out not to decide the experience at all. And if that's true, then the cheap solution and the moral catastrophe could be the very same thing. If you want the full picture, all the figures, the studies, the sources laid out properly, I've written it up in depth over at consciousnesspartnership.com.